let's talk about Anna Karenina. Bet you don't hear that every day. But I just finished reading this monstrosity of a book. It was 800 pages long, and originally I wasn't going to do a book review for it just because I feel like book reviews can sometimes be a little bit boring. But I just found a movie, Anna Karenina, on Netflix starring Keira Knightley and Jude, and it was so good and it inspired me to talk about it. It is a book written by Leo Tolstoy, and originally it was written in Russian. And the book itself is very dense, so if it is something that you kind of want to attempt reading, I think you'll just have to do it in sections. 10 pages at a time, 20 pages at a time. I think the most I ever read was maybe 50, 60. And just by doing those chunks, you'll be able to get through it, but you just kind of have to set those goals for yourself because it's not necessarily something like Harry Potter or Twilight that you're just gonna, be a page turner. It isn't necessarily a page turner, but it is a very deep book if you allow it to truly go down the way it's supposed to. It's about Russian society, and it hits on different topics, political topics about equality, female rights at the time, Russian society being impacted by European society, marriage, adultery, everything in between. It covers a lot of topics. Definitely the most prominent one would be that of love and marriage and morality. I think those are the main themes of the book for sure. And there's this one famous quote. Anna says, I think if there are as many minds as there are heads, there must be as many loves as there are hearts. And it kind of hits at the diversity of love and the many different faces that love can take between person to person to person. And so I think that is exceptionally true. So just going through each of the characters and how they approach love. Anna first, she has a very interesting relationship with it because when she got married, she was 18 and she was not in love with her husband. And so when she meets Vronsky, that's kind of the first infatuation that she experiences, and she chases this feeling of something that she can't have, which we all do. What human doesn't want what they can't have? And she experiences that in a very harsh and bitter way according to the society that she lives in. One interesting relationship that I couldn't quite understand in the book is her relationship with her daughter. And I think after watching the movie, I kind of got the relationship a little bit more. She is unable to give her daughter an independent name, and she never truly connects with love to her daughter. I saw in the movie almost her daughter as a miniature version of herself, and by naming her after herself, it's almost like her inability to love Anna is like an inability to love herself. That harsh rejection of self-love is something that I think contributes to her poor mental health. And she definitely thought, based on a few series of dreams, that she was going to die when she was in labor with her daughter. She was hoping that she would be redeemed in a sense. If she were to die, it's almost as if Anna, her miniature version of herself, would be the pure part of her soul that is able to continue on her behalf. But because that doesn't happen, it's almost like there's like the separation that happens, and it could also be linked, it doesn't necessarily mention this, but it could be linked to like postpartum depression. Even just her change in mental state after having her daughter is very severe and very noticeable. And she's also addicted to morphine after that happens due to her near-death experience while she is in labor. And Vronsky, he also has this idealistic version of love, but it's less so for the sake of love and more so for the sake of getting something satisfied. Relentlessly pursues after what he can't have until he pretty much stalks Anna until Anna gives in, which is really, corrupt of him. I feel like Vronsky is a very unlikable character. I don't know how you can have much pity for Vronsky. He just seems like he does what he wants. And he wants Anna, he gets Anna, but after that he wants his independence, and he does many things to distance himself after he's even with Anna, so that he's not truly looking out for her and for her needs. He just sees her as, a being that can satisfy what he wants. Levin and Kitty have a very, very idealistic version of love, but more so it seems like they feel that marriage will be the completion of themselves. But it's definitely shown in the book that that is not the case, as their honeymoon phase is pretty much just filled with arguments. And that kind of makes me think about I don't know if this fact is true, but I just remember reading it at one point, is that the leading cause of arguments within marriage isn't necessarily arguments about money or political views or family relationships, but it's a difference in expectations and a failure to voice those expectations. And I feel like that's what Levin and Kitty discover within their own marriage. And they definitely argue in the beginning as they go from this idealistic view of this is what marriage is going to be, this is what love is, this is what my life is going to look like when it's perfect and filled. And they are obsessed with each other. And then once the reality sets in, then it's like, oh, this is what it is. And they have to kind of re-grapple with love and grapple with themselves, and it kind of reshapes into this new thing. I think their story is very realistic. There's also mental health, and Levin and Anna definitely struggle the most with that. Definitely Anna. She is addicted to morphine, and towards the end of the book it describes that she can't go to sleep without having morphine. And so that addiction definitely plays a role into her committing suicide, which is, spoiler alert. I guess you're supposed to say spoiler alert before you spoil it. But yeah, spoiler alert, that's what happens. I just want to read final thoughts that she gets in this moment before committing suicide. So if this is a very sensitive topic for you, I would maybe just be aware of what might trigger you and maybe skip over this portion of the video, or just guard yourself and guard your heart if this is something that's difficult for you to listen to. This is right after she's thrown herself under the train. And in that same instant, she was horrified at what she was doing. Where am I? What am I doing? Why? She wanted to rise, to throw herself back, but something huge pushed at her head and dragged over her. Lord, forgive me for everything, she said, feeling the impossibility of any struggle. And the candle by the light of which she had been reading that book, filled with anxieties, deceptions, grief, and evil, flared up brighter than ever, lit up for her all that had once been in darkness, sputtered, grew dim, and went out forever. And I feel like those words are just incredibly powerful. And it's just my interpretation by saying that the light grew bright, and once, like, everything that was once in darkness was illuminated. I feel like this haze that she was in, this mental darkness, all of a sudden became bright, and she realized, like, whoa, life is here. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And it was just this really, really powerful description, I think, by Tolstoy. What is that feeling? What are those final moments before someone dies by their own hand? Is a very, very severe and hard subject matter. Levin has a different experience, but he is also suicidal. He gets to a point where he gets all that he ever wanted. He has his estate. He has his family surrounding him. He just had a son through Kitty. He's married to his dream girl, and he is struggling mostly with religion and questions of religion. There's the person who has such obvious calls for help, and that was Anna. But then there are the not so obvious signs with Levin, where he on the outside seems happy and he's content and he's working and he has all he needs. But these two people are struggling with the exact same things. What ends Levin's story in a happier sense than with Anna is, they're struggling with different questions. Like she is trapped in this position of social ruin. He is in this position of feeling like his life is meaningless. And so they're in very, very different positions. He's a little bit more privileged than she is in society. A little bit. He's a lot more privileged than she is in society. But he gets to this point where he realizes that, the greatest things in life can't be figured out through reason. You can't figure out love. You can't figure out faith. You can't figure out God. And so he gets to that realization by the end of the book, which makes him in a very happy state, realizing what faith is all of a sudden. He realizes, like, this exists, this brings happiness and fulfillment, and this is what we're meant to do. We're just meant to not figure it out. Unfortunately, with Anna, she was part of a society that was very, very oppressive towards women, and just the fact that she couldn't get a divorce and that her previous husband was holding that over her, and he had that power over her to not grant her divorce, to continue to control her life from afar. That was his way of getting back at her. And the movie mentions this. I don't think it's a line in the book. I could forgive her if she just broke the law, but she broke the rules. And that is such an interesting quote. Like, she would be acceptable if she just broke the law, technically the law of marriage. But she not only broke the law of marriage, she broke the social rules. And because she broke those social rules, she won't be accepted by this friend group, by this party over here. Like, there's so many different social groups that has to do with like who you know, how much money you have, wealth and status and family and royalty. Like, that's all a big part of the book about like where your standing is. And Anna was neglected from all sides because not only had she committed adultery, but she was a married woman living with a man who was not her husband, and she had a child by both men. And so even though there are plenty of women in the book who have cheated on their husbands, like tons of women in the book, they did it in a way to break the law but keep the rules. But Anna had no regard for the law, no regard for the rules, and that's what made her unacceptable. Also, kind of the final point and final thoughts that I had was, it's very interesting to look at the relationship of Vronsky and Anna and the relationship of Kitty and Levin. The non-ideal woman ends up with the ideal man. So Anna is not the proper woman. She's not the motherly type. She's not nurturing to her own flesh and blood. She does things off the book. She speaks her mind. She speaks up for women getting education. She reads books. She educates herself. She was not the ideal woman. Kitty, on the other hand, was the ideal woman. She had this motherly sense about her. It talked about when Levin saw how she was with his dying brother, that she just had this womanly way, just knew what to do in those really tough emotional situations. She commanded a household. She wanted children. She was strong during childbirth. She was fearless. Levin was also kind of the non-ideal picture of a man. He wasn't super interested in politics. He didn't see the reason why they were all like fussing over those things. And he wanted to get satisfying work, not profit out of something that he didn't earn. And so he didn't fit into kind of the social construct of who a man was, just like Anna didn't. They get on so easily with conversation. They easily understand each other and see each other, and all of a sudden, like, it just clicks. They talk about how easy it is to flow with conversation. It kind of, from a personality aspect, kind of makes me think about sensors versus intuitives, where sensors are all like the majority of the population. They're all having these similar conversations, and intuitives just want to talk about certain things, like, you know, reading Anna Karenina. None of my friends will read this book. It's just about finding your people, and I feel like Levin and Anna were each other's people, but their passing was very, very brief. And Vronsky was kind of the ideal picture of a man, like Kitty was the ideal picture of a woman. Like, he was ambitious, he was talented, he was likable, but he was with a person who was not that way, and like Kitty was with someone who was not that way. So I just thought it was interesting, kind of contrasting what it is like to be an ideal woman, what it's like to be an ideal man. So those are my major thoughts over the book of Anna Karenina. Please do hit me up if you have read the book at all, if you have thoughts or opinions or contrary opinions to anything that I've said. I love discussion. Let me know what you thought about the book, and I would love to discuss it with you. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope I'll see you on the next book review.